At Hospice of Chattanooga, we take the time to listen, honor the family and patient's choices, and walk with them through life's journey. I'm Meg Bean, Executive Director of the Hospice of Chattanooga Foundation. We are the only not-for-profit hospice in our region, and in that capacity, we take care of everybody who needs hospice care but has no health insurance. We also run a number of special programs that no other hospice provides, including our pediatric program, a perinatal program where we work with parents of unborn terminally ill children or infants that develop a terminal syndrome or illness. We also do a tremendous amount of work with many grieving families throughout the region, whether they've had an experience with hospice or not.
Our story begins 3 years ago, actually this month. We found out we were pregnant with our third child, and we were overjoyed. We have twins, now 7-year-olds, and we were so excited to find out that we were going to have another child. It was shortly after Christmas that next year that we found out that our son had severe heart defects. He was born on May 28, 2013, and we were overjoyed at the birth of our son. He looked beautiful. He looked much better than what he was supposed to, honestly. But our worst fears were confirmed. As soon as Brock was born, they were not sure if he would be able to even make a sound. They feared that he would be blue, that we'd not be getting enough oxygen, and he had a great set of lungs. He yelled and he was red just like anybody, and cried. And they showed him to us very quickly, and they had to take him off to the other end of Vanderbilt. And I didn't know if I would ever see him again, quite honestly. And they held him up right next to me just for a brief second, and I spoke to him, and he turned his head all the way around. I'd never seen a baby have that much head control. He turned his head all the way around and looked at me, and my husband actually has that picture, and we had 23 days of enjoyment. We enjoyed our son.
Hospice just coordinated so much, and the things that we wouldn't have thought of until it was time to deal with it. And then, like I said, that would have taken time away from Brock. And so, especially when that moment came, we were prepared, and Hospice was there to help us every step of the way.
The physical care that we provide for the mother and the baby is just the tip of the iceberg. It's all the psychosocial support and care and comfort that we are there with the family, helping them as they come to terms with that reality. Those are the kinds of things that make Hospice of Chattanooga so special.
Where Hospice came in was that, as I said, Brock was stable, and he did not need to be in a hospital. He didn't need to be hooked up to a machine. He didn't need constant supervision. But he did need a checkup, here and there. So instead of us spending our 23 days going back and forth to an office and talking to countless doctors and sitting in waiting rooms, Hospice came to us. And, that allowed us, 23 days goes by real fast, and that's the only time we got with Brock. So what they did for us is immeasurable, because we got to spend that time with him instead of hanging out in a doctor's office or something like that. To take advantage of it, use it. It's a great service, and if you ever unfortunately do come in a situation where they can help, they can help. And once again, it just helps you focus on the things that you'd rather be focusing on in a situation like that, and just takes so much pressure off, and allows you to have the kind of memories that you want to have.
He was a general contractor, second generation in our family business, worked all of his life at that after being in the Navy. A lifelong Chattanoogan, other than not born in Chattanooga, but other than that was here all 89 and a half years. He had spinal stenosis, and he had trouble standing initially, and everywhere he went, somebody got him a chair. He had a cane, then he had one of those rollator walkers, and it went everywhere he went, and he went on his own power, and he had another little episode and was in the hospital, and so palliative care got involved, and that worked great. They were there when we needed us or came to check him when he didn't need to go to a specialist, and that really did work out very well. And at that time, he wasn't dying. He just needed more attention. We all dreaded the aspect of him being in a nursing home or some kind of care facility, even if it was next door. You know, just we had the ability to push the couch back and push the dining room table back and had the hospital bed in the living room, right where he had lived. I have nothing but positive, glowing, high remarks for every aspect we encountered.
My dad, Hugh Halfaker, we lost him in June of 2014, and he was a wonderful man. He was an exemplary businessman in the insurance, Halfaker Insurance, Halfaker Real Estate. He was a developer. He was one of the founders of Rivermont Presbyterian Church, and he also had a servant's heart.
He was in Florida when he was put in hospice down in Ormond Beach.
Actually, the day before he ended up going into hospice care, we really had, I didn't know it was his last walk to the beach, but we were down there and we just enjoyed the day so much. With the water cooled our feet, there was a cool breeze. We were looking at the sunshine, the ocean, the sky, taking in deep breaths, just enjoying our day. And then the next day, his health changed and he was hospitalized, and then soon after went to hospice.
And we needed to get him back to Chattanooga. We didn't know what to do. So I picked up the phone and called Clark Taylor, who I knew. And he was most helpful. He arranged everything. We took care of the transportation and got Hugh back up here into Chattanooga at the Hospice Care Center. And they did a tremendous job. He was only there for a few days, but they did a tremendous job and really showed just real love and respect and dignity. And we're just so thankful that we had them to go to.
Daddy had been in declining health for the last few years, and there had been some thoughts. I'd even brought it up to the family, you know, should we call hospice in? And I think in some ways families can be a little bit in denial and or feel like they might be giving up on their loved one. But actually looking back, I really wish that we had called in hospice sooner. I feel like it could have been very comforting to Mother and Daddy, and also it's so difficult getting him to doctor's appointments. If they'd had the hospice team come to the house with the doctors, the nurses, the grief counselors, the medical nursing assistants, and all that could have made life easier for them.
He lived with a lot of gratitude, a lot of love, and he blessed all of us. I was very fortunate to be a part of this family by marrying Kathy, and have known Hugh and Marion close to 50 years, so it's been a blessing.
My father was retired military because he was hit in Korea. He was a Marine. And very disciplined, very brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. He was a lawyer. After he left the Marines, he was a lawyer and had his own firm, Gentry and Bohm, here for many, many years, after which he joined Spears, Moore, Rebnan, and Williams, and ended up his last years of practicing law there. Absolutely brilliant man. He had been bedridden for approximately 3 years and ended up in the hospital beginning of January, which was supposedly just an overnight stay to get him fluids and get him back home. And the overnight stay continued, and they found one thing after another. And after, I believe, about a week, possibly, of being in the hospital, that's when hospice was called in. And so thankful for hospice, because once we got him home, then he didn't have to go back to the hospital. It was absolutely important. He was miserable in the hospital. He was absolutely miserable in the hospital and wouldn't have been happy anywhere else. And so the fact that we were able to keep him there, to get him out of the hospital and bring him home was key. the care team was absolutely fabulous, and they came, I believe, daily to take vitals. And there was one day in particular where he was not doing well, and the young nurse that was there was just so patient, so kind, so gentle, and stayed the distance until he was willing to give up his finger for his heart rate check and things like that. So they couldn't have been more accommodating. They were never in a hurry. They were always there, very present, very there with you. And that was very comforting. And any time of the day, if we needed them in the morning, if we needed them at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, we always had somebody available to us.
I think it's important for everyone to realize that hospice care is just as much for the family caregivers as it is for the patient. And in some cases, it's more about the family caregivers than it actually is about the patient. So that whole family unit feels surrounded and lifted up so that they can focus on spending quality time with their loved one, giving that loved one the highest possible quality of life that can be achieved, and being there for that family during and after the death of that loved one. And I don't know that everybody really understands how much support there is for that family as they go through this process.
The nurse who came to make the pronouncement after my father passed, she stayed with us from the moment that she arrived, which was approximately, I believe, about 5, until the funeral home showed up, which wasn't, I don't remember them showing up until about 8 or 9 o'clock. So she was there for a number of hours in our home. And during that time, she took care of the meds, which was important. But then I kept having questions that would come up. And so we'd just sit down and talk. And she'd sit down and talk to Mother, or she'd sit down and talk to my brothers. And she was so patient and so kind and so caring. And she was not going to leave until we were taken care of. And I really appreciate that. I believe in the mission of hospice, and I believe in the people who work with hospice. After being in touch with them firsthand, it is imperative to me to support such an organization with people who go out of their way for someone they don't even know. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
My name is Susan Latta, and I'm the coordinator of the bereavement program with Hospice of Chattanooga. That means that myself and my colleague Jackie Casey, we work with people generally after the death, after someone's experienced a death, doing either individual, couples therapy, family therapy, or facilitating groups for people that have had a significant death in their life. And so all of our grief services are completely funded by donations. We do not charge for any of the camps. We don't charge for any of the groups. We don't charge for any of the individual services that we service to people in the community that have not had Hospice of Chattanooga services. And so they matter tremendously to help continue this program going.
My husband, Rod, lived to do one thing, and that was to make people laugh. He was the biggest jokester that I ever knew. And when he was diagnosed with cancer in 2010, I guess it was, he never stopped smiling or laughing. Well, we certainly never thought that we would lose Rod. You know, I never thought that at 41 I would be a widow. I never thought when my daughter was 4 years old that she would not have a father. You just don't, that's not supposed to happen. He didn't stop fighting until his body just started giving out. It finally slapped us in the face that we're not necessarily going to beat this thing, so how do we make the best of it now? And Hospice of Chattanooga was everything to us for those last 5 weeks. They made sure he was comfortable. They made sure that I knew what to look for, what to expect. But most importantly for my daughter, Susan Latta and the social workers, they took extra care in coming into our home to make sure she was aware of what was going to happen.
Money that is spent for bereavement services is spent well, and it is, I think in our society where grief is often not something that people are comfortable talking about, it's a wonderful place for families, kids, adults, teens, whomever, to be able to come and be able to talk about grief in a safe way. And so if there's anything that anyone is willing to do as far as contributing to the bereavement program, I would be grateful.
Hospice of Chattanooga was one of the first 18 hospices in the United States to partner with the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization and the VA to develop new practices and protocols to make sure that we recognize veterans at the end of life and give them all the care and support that they need. So we've been so honored to be a founding member of the We Honor Veterans national movement, and we've been engaged in working closely with veterans and their families now since 2009. And it's just been wonderful to see our vet-to-vet volunteer program grow, where veteran volunteers come and work with us and go out and do recognition to veteran patients. There is always a strong emotional reaction in both the volunteer and the veteran during these beautiful recognition pinning ceremonies.
Rod served in the Army. He was on active duty for 4 years and then in the reserves for another 4 years. And our social worker made sure that she told us about the vet-to-vet program. Jim Scholl was the veteran that came to our home for the pinning, and it was really one of the highlights of Rod's care. It made us very proud that, it was a memory that Savannah will always have. She has the certificate in her room. She has the Afghan that one of the volunteers made, and we have the pin. So we have that acknowledgement that Rod did something special in his life.
Kids typically love it because it's just a very fun day. They are going from event to event to event to event. And they're able, like I had one little boy whose sister died a couple years ago, and he had not talked about his sister's death, and he got in the car and he started talking about his sister's death. And that was so profound for his parents because that was something that they were really concerned about, that he was holding back. And so it's like all of a sudden they have permission. And I think for a lot of kids, they don't talk about that kind of stuff at school or with their friends. And so now you're in a group with other kids that have had a significant death, and it's like, wow, that person lost his dad or his mom or her grandma, whoever it is, and there's this freedom. And so typically we get very, very positive feedback, both from the kids and the adults.
The camp has been a highlight. The last camp that we went to, Savannah got in the car after the day was done, and she said, "You know what I learned today? That it's okay to be sad." And for some reason, she felt like she couldn't grieve. And I think that's just the upbeat nature of our family. But the fact that she knows it's okay to be sad, and it's not me telling her that, it's her friends and her counselors. It's helped us get through this.
It's such a magical day.
This community started Hospice of Chattanooga. A group of passionate volunteers came together in the beginning, and out of that interest and desire to have hospice care, this wonderful new form of care available so that families could take care of their loved ones at home, and yet they would not be in pain, and they would have all the support and coaching that they needed. And we've just grown with the community to meet the needs of the community. We really reflect the love and the care that came together in the beginning to create this wonderful new organization, and we continue to add services and personnel as the community needs come to us.